Ida B. Wells protesting against lynching.
Ida B. Wells led the fight against lynching in the United States through her writing free speech. She was motivated to write against lynching because her own best friend had been lynched, and she realized he wasn't the only one being lynched by the white mobs, who would even come into the jails to lynch the black men. Ida B. Wells' legacy through her writing ensured that today African Americans are not still being lynched and do not have to worry about being killed, ending the traumatizing black families by witnessing these horrible scenes of murder and abuse by the white mob.
1880s to 1930s was known as the lynching era in the United States. It's estimated that 2,462 African American men, women, children were murdered by mostly white mobs during this time, usually in the South. Also, during this time, Jim Crow laws were happening in the United States. Jim Crow laws was a system of racial segregation that separated blacks from whites. Blacks and whites could not drink from the same water fountain, go to school together, eat at the same restaurant, or use the same restrooms. This was the world Ida B. Wells grew up in.
Ida B. Wells grew up always wanting to do the right thing. At 16, she took responsibility of her little brothers and sisters because her mom and dad and little brother died. The horror of lynching came to effect to Wells in 1892 when one of her close friends, Thomas Moss, was murdered by the white Memphis mob for defending his own grocery store. He was lynched because his business was doing better than the white people's business. The white mob did not get in trouble for the murder of Tom Moss. This incident made Ida B. Wells mad, and she knew she needed to do something about it.
One day, Ida B. Wells also had the chance to go against Jim Crow laws herself. She had bought a $500 ticket for a train track cart. It was an all-women's cart. She sat down and the conductor came up to her and told her that she had to go to an all-blacks cart. She refused to move, so they dragged her out of her seat. She continued to resist, fighting, and bit them. She sued the railroad company in the Memphis court. She won the first case, and so they took her case to the U.S. Supreme Court, where she lost. The judge said the railroad would have to pay her $500. She also began publicly speaking out and writing for a newspaper, and they liked her handwriting so much she opened her own newspaper called Freedom Speech. They called her Princess of the Press.
Ida B. Wells led the anti-lynching campaign by using her free speech newspaper to speak out against the evils of lynching. She wanted to spread the awareness about lynching not only because of her personal experience, but for the hundreds of other black people that were getting lynched for no reason other than their skin color. When a person was being lynched in this matter, it was called lynching. Ida saw the sadness and fear caused by lynching, so she began writing. Ida thought blacks and whites were entitled to equal justice. Ida felt like it was her duty to fight for justice. Ida B. Wells said, "I'd rather go down in history as a lone Negro who dared to tell the government that it has done no dastardly thing than to save my skin for talking back and what I have said." This dynamic, intelligent woman used her writing skills to promote freedom, safety, and justice.
Ida B. Wells left Memphis, Tennessee, and went to New York because a white mob attacked her office. and destroyed it for speaking out against lynching. Afterwards, the web mob threatened her business partner, J.L. Fleming. Fleming, a close friend of Ida's, owned one of the biggest newspapers for blacks in New York City, the New York Age. Fleming helped her by letting her work there until she got back on her feet. Ida B. Wells worked hard writing for him. Ida wrote about lynching among African Americans, especially African American men. She published these writings because she wanted to raise awareness of the treatment among African Americans.
By 1931, lynching in America had nearly come to an end. In 1830, 85 blacks were lynched, but in 1891, only 5 were lynched. African Americans were affected in a huge way because they no longer had to live in war about a white mob attacking them or their families having to suffer their loss. More than any other person in America, she spoke and wrote about the crime of lynching. Ida believed that all Americans, black or white, were entitled to equal justice. Through her writing skills, she promoted freedom, safety, and justice. Ida made it possible to obtain freedom and justice no matter what the color of the skin was. This was the story of Ida B. Wells.